Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today, I have an exclusive interview. I'm going to try not to brutalize his last name. We have Ariel Bakshandeh. He is from Radio Uninvited. He's a Twitter Spaces connoisseur. You go on Spaces, you're probably going to find him on there. He runs a lot of political rooms, a lot of mindful wellness rooms. He attacks the government like I do, so because we're very unhappy with what our government does to us. So I bring you Ariel Ray, as he's known on Radio Uninvited. Hello, Ariel. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
All right. I hope I didn't brutalize the last name too bad.
It was the dead part, but it was fine other than that.
Yeah, give me time. I'll get it down.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself and all that, growing up and stuff like that.
That's my forte. But thanks. So the thing is that basically my parents were Iranian immigrants to the country, were Jewish, so that puts a little taste on it. Now, so I grew up in very affluent areas of the United States, like right here in near West LA. It's called like the Wilshire Corridor, like Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, Bel Air, and things like that. But despite that kind of level of kind of like affluence when I was growing up, it didn't mean that like my childhood was all that like, like I had, how can I say this? I, I, I I had this thing where I was like living in my own head, and while other kids, my peers were into like sports and girls and stuff like that, I was more of the introverted type that just kind of liked video games, just kind of liked thinking. So what is it? I went to Beverly Hills High School. After I graduated from there, I went to Santa Monica College. After that, I went to California State University, Northridge, up in the valley. Uh, I grew up kind of like during the recession times. So even like the most minimum of jobs were like hard to kind of find. And now I find myself living in the heart of the West LA area, and much better. I'm much happier than when I lived kind of isolated up in the hills.
Nice. And just a reminder to the people that are watching via Twitter, throw a comment on there if you like. I'll try to keep up with them on there also. So I have Twitter over here on the side. So Ariel, Radio Uninvited. Tell me a little bit about that. What's Radio Uninvited, and what's it about? I mean, I know I've been on there once, and a few of my videos are now, or my audio interviews are on there now, but tell everybody else a little bit about Radio Uninvited.
So it's me and my two co-hosts, or they would call me a co. We're all three hosts, and then it depends on who's talking and who takes over. Basically, we're seeing that in this country, that this political polarization has just gone insane, and what we're really trying to do is like get a handle on that. So basically, we call it Radio Uninvited because we think that as voices in the middle, we are uninvited to the conversation. It's like if you're not on these extreme sides of the spectrum, then your voice isn't really that heard. So as our political discourse has been going off the rails of culture wars, we want to kind of bring it to the center of like what's actually good for people's pocketbooks, what's actually good for people in their day-to-day lives, rather than kind of fighting these culture wars. But that's also not all we do. We interview people who are famous. We interview people who are not only famous but just have prominence in our society, etc.
All right. So who's the what's the most memorable or the best interview that you guys have done so far that really just like took you in?
Wow, that's a hard one. We've had like so many of them, and it's just been a lot. So if it's funny because if I say Andrew Yang's interview, then that's kind of like the thing. But I'm trying to kind of think of one that was, I think, one of the most memorable interviews. In addition to that, was Hank Rogers, because Hank Rogers was like the creator of Tetris, and we kind of did a deep dive into the history of how he came to creating that video game and things like that. And at me, as like a science and tech connoisseur, I really really enjoy those things. So I'd have to say that next to the Hank Rogers interview, the Hank Rogers was the best, and next to that was Andrew Yang's.
All right. All right. Now, before the show, you told me that you guys have a Good Pods rating #1 in independent business news.
Yes. We've been putting a lot of shows out there and everything like that. And so when we put it up on Good Pods, we've got, I don't know how their algorithm works, but with all the downloads that we got, it rated us #1 in independent business news. Oh, hang on a second. If I can go back to the previous question. I think that one of our best interviews was actually with Alberto Hill. He was a hacker in Uruguay who like had to like face his country's justice system that hardly knew what like about ethical hacking. So he had to spend like years and years in jail because he found a hole in the system. And instead of like being thanked, like, thank you for finding the hole in the system, now we can better address it, he was punished for it. Kind of reminds you of that old phrase that says like no good deed goes unpunished. So actually, we had one interview with him that we lost somewhere. And then when we wanted to redo the interview with him, when we lost his file, it actually turned out that the wheels of justice are slow to turn, but they've actually turned enough that his government actually recognized that what they did to him was unfair and provided, I think, some kind of compensation, and his profile just went up. And he was always thinking that he'll never get to see his happy ending, but he finally saw his happy ending. And what reminded me of that is when you said #1 on independent business news, and Alberto is right at the top of all of those interviews.
Nice, nice. Yes, I have spoken with Alberto on many occasions in Twitter Spaces. Really good guy. I like him and all that. He can be a little quirky sometimes, but
Yeah.
overall, he's a good guy. Really, really like him and all that.
He has a good heart. And let me be also the first to mention that Bryce and Asia also work with me on Radio Uninvited. So let me just get their their Twitter handles out here too. But Bryce's Twitter handle is at Stoic Bryce. So that's that, and then
If you
Asia's.
if you can send it to me in the chat, and I'll do a quick copy and paste, and I'll just put it up here on the board for us.
Perfect. All right. Stoic Bryce, because they are my co-hosts. And then let me get Asia's Paris of Prairie. AI. Perfect. There you go.
All right, all right. Now, while I'm doing that, tell me a little bit about your trip down to, what was it, Arizona, to where you met Andrew Yang.
Yes, exactly. So basically, let me just like pre-frame it for you, and I'm pretty sure. So let's just say I had an electronic job, and I've been very, very consistent with my hours and everything like that. I never complain. I show up on time. And this whole thing happened that the management wasn't letting me do it. And I said, this, as you know, this is very important for me. I just need these 2 days. And they said, no, we need you here, and you didn't give us a 2-week notice. And I remind them, like, you changed my schedule like the day before without letting me know a thing. Almost every week you change the 2 days I have off, and I haven't complained. I haven't said anything. So at least you would do this for me. So long story short, eventually I just don't like the way I'm treated there, and I quit. And so, yeah, I go to Phoenix, Arizona, and I go to this forward meetup where Andrew Yang is also there addressing everybody. I book the plane, I book the hotel, I do everything like that, and yeah.
All right. Did you get to sit down and have a conversation with him?
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It was a very, very busy event. So what basically happened was that he was like there, and he was kind of he gave a speech with this guy. His name was Adrian Fontes. And what happened with Adrian Fontes was just like he said, Andrew Yang started, and he started his speech by saying, "Hey, it seems like Arizona dodged a big Kerry Lake sized bullet." And then the audience started like laughing a little bit, and I thought that was a little bit interesting. And he said, forward is open to everybody. You don't just have to be an independent. You can be a forward Democrat or a forward Republican. So it turns out a lot of people at that Arizona meetings wanted to kind of label themselves as forward Republicans. Forward Democrats. They were looking to make alliances. But other than that, you couldn't really get a sit down with Andrew Yang, whole conversation. There was a selfie line. You could take a selfie with him. And I gave him an idea, but he didn't. I think the selfie line was before the speech. I gave him an idea that he didn't use, but he thanked me for the idea. I said, Andrew, we're having this event in Phoenix. And you do know in some types of mythologies, phoenixes rise out of the ashes. So I said, maybe you can make that a kind of idea, just like a phoenix, we're rising out of the ashes of this duopoly.
Yes. Bryce just put a little comment up there. Radio Uninvited is Asia Hussein, Bryce Noble, Ariel Ray, and executive producer Bob Johnson. Yes. And Bryce is also obviously Bryce Noble. This is Bryce that's posting, so everyone knows. So, yep. So Arizona went good. Andrew Yang. Now you have Andrew Yang on speed dial now, don't you?
yes, I do. It was an eventuality for a guy who kind of chased him down for his entire. I didn't chase him down per se, but I've monitored Andrew Yang ever since his Joe Rogan podcast, and this is no joke. Almost every day of the presidential cycle when he was running, I would go on YouTube and I would type in Andrew Yang and I would click on upload date and I would kind of follow him along and everything like that. So, look, if I were out there and somebody was monitoring my every move as like a public figure, I would want to meet that person and get to know that person.
Yes. Now, granted, I didn't go to those extremes, but I did. I saw Andrew Yang, and I rewrote part of this just to make sure that Andrew Yang, he's got a subchapter in my book because he inspired me also. And that brings me to the next part of the show here. Forward Party and UBI, because two of the things that interested me with Andrew Yang, UBI, which again, initially I was against UBI and I did a lot of research on it and it changed my point of view. And the other thing is Andrew talked about our data and how, companies are just selling our data left and right and making money off of us, our information, and how we should be compensated for that, which I completely agree. I mean, companies should be paying me to use my data if they're going to try to, make money off of me, that they should be paying me for that information. So, what are the things that drew you in initially to Andrew Yang that made you like, hey, I like this guy, I like what he's about? Besides him being just he brings this presence of being just this nice, wonderful guy that the kind of guy that you can sit down and drink a beer with and tell a joke to, and just have light conversation. It doesn't even have to be political and all that. He just seems like that all around nice guy. So between what he was running for when he ran for president and the fact that he's a nice guy, that's what kind of drew me to Andrew Yang. Now, granted, I'm not a member of the Forward Party, so this isn't me endorsing him for anything. It's just that I like the guy. I think he has a brilliant mind. So what is it that attracted you to Andrew?
So it's funny that you say he's a guy that you could have a beer with, but he's also a guy you can have a boba tea with if you don't drink alcohol. Yes, exactly. So he's for all ages. And what really brought me to him is that, back in 2016, Trump was making all those promises of bringing the jobs back, like economic kind of like things. And so what I kind of saw is that when Trump was saying that stuff, and mind you, this was before Trump was president, I was thinking to myself, maybe we need someone who's not an establishment kind of politician. But then when he got his foot in the door, he didn't make it about all those things he promised. He made it about himself and his own ego. So I also remember that our generation was kind of sold this story of, your education is so important. And if you do well in school, and if you finish your studies, and if you're that like A student or even, B, and you don't get a lot of bad grades, and you get your college degree, you should be fine, right? And stuff like that. So when that was kind of happening, I followed that narrative, and lo and behold, graduated into this kind of like recession that that kind of my generation graduated into about like 8-10 years ago. And then when Andrew Yang talked about universal basic income, and he talked about it more in the terms of a citizen's dividend instead of a what's the word I'm looking for? Instead of just like a handout, that made sense, because he said, how many of you remember voting for the 0708 bank bailouts?
Yeah.
No, nobody raised their hand. Nobody says we remember voting for that.
Because we didn't have a vote on it.
We didn't have a vote on it. And then he said, how many times do you think that when shareholders get a dividend from a company, everyone asks, wait, what are they going to do with that money? Are they going to spend it on drugs? Are they going to spend it on alcohol? Nobody, they're
Right.
not held. So you figure out that the powers that be have this, I like to call it a reality distortion machine. They have this reality distortion machine in terms of like the mainstream media and a lot of like right-wing talk shows, and maybe some that go on the far left. And somehow the rich and powerful people in our country aren't held to the same standards as the people who just want to get by. And I think that is so odious, and that is so grotesque, and that has to be center stage. And I think Andrew, with his idea of a universal basic income, it's not just about people who don't want to work. Sometimes people live in areas where there is no work to be done. And sometimes people live in areas where the work opportunities that are presented to them are highly exploitative work opportunities. It is, and I liked his idea that he called it the freedom dividend, because true freedom is not is having options. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing that money gives you, it's options. You want to get around, a car costs money. An Uber costs money. Even the bus fare costs like $1.25. I mean, or even more now. I don't know what's happened with that. But for me, the thing is it's funny. In one of his speeches, I said, what we have to do is make a foundation and rise to the occasion. So I think a universal basic income is a foundation. And the thing with the other kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of welfare programs is that they're not a floor. They're either a ceiling, because if you start doing more well for yourself in a job or in your life, the welfare programs are going to put a cap.
Right.
But the thing with a UBI is that it tells you do as well with your life as you want. This is just supplemental. Now, it's not a coincidence that when we saw the pandemic unemployment that was being given, nobody like how hard do you think people were working on their job searchers when they were giving that unemployment? Probably not that hard. But it was like, wait a minute. But if you gave a universal basic income, if they got the money no matter what, there's no negative incentive there for them not to be a productive member of society.
Right. You know, when I did my research on it, I went all the way back to Moore and Vives back in the 1500s. And, you know, during the discussion with an archbishop and all that, at the time, if you were stealing like a loaf of bread, they would kill you, you know, they would hang you, you know, and they couldn't believe that people were dying for a loaf of bread. And it's like, well, when people are hungry, they're going to do anything they can to feed themselves. So the suggestion was, well, why not just give everybody an income? Then they wouldn't have to steal bread, you know? And it's kind of where we're at right now is we need to give everybody an income. And even though I know at the beginning there were a lot of people that were on board with it, and there were a lot of Democrats that, you know, they liked the idea, but they just didn't get behind it because, again, they wanted to associate it with like welfare programs and stuff like that.
Right.
And the bottom line is that the big question that came up was, how do we pay for it? How do we pay for it? And when you look at how much a UBI would actually cost, depending upon, you know, how much it is. I mean, at around $1,000 a month, which is going to be about $12,000 a year for everybody in the United States, you're looking at almost a $4 trillion cost every year. Okay. The taxation system that we have cannot supply that because, I mean, we only bring in $3 to $4 trillion a year. So I came up with and I want to thank Andrew Yang for bringing this, because this is what helped me come up with a taxation system that would generate that kind of money. Because the taxation system that I talk about in my book would generate between $20 to $30 trillion a year, which means not only can we afford to do a full UBI for people, we can also do universal health care. We can have a universal educational system to where no one has to pay anything to go to school. We can have a universal daycare system. And the retirement that we currently have, I know people that got their retirement, and because of how little they were paid when they worked, it's not a survivable wage. You know, the retirement isn't survivable. So I could actually guarantee a survivable retirement, which would be giving you probably double what Social Security gives you. So we need to really look at these different things. And that brings me to AI, because I don't think people realize what the capabilities of AI is going to be here within just even the next decade. I mean, yeah, everyone looks at like Elon Musk. Okay, so he's going to have a self-driving car. He's going to have these robots that are going to be working in the back of the house, and that's going to take away the labor jobs. But we have AI that can pass the lawyer's bar and the medical bar and all of these different things. How long before all the white collar jobs are being taken, because it's going to take a lot of, I mean, you're going to have people that are writing code that takes, 2 months to put out a program, whereas AI can write something in 5 minutes. So my question is going to be, and Ariel will be right back, but my question is going to be, if we don't do something now with like a UBI,
Yeah.
what are we looking at for the future generations of people that aren't going to be able to get a job, because we're going to lose a lot of the jobs? Because I remember you talking to somebody, because somebody had brought up, well, with new innovations and new technology, it creates new jobs, where in the past, when we would have technologies that would eliminate a job, it would also create a job. But this isn't a linear creation anymore. For every 20 jobs it takes, it's only going to create one.
Yeah. Okay. You've explained. We just have to look at the cold hard facts. Instead, I saw that interview that you had with Joe Walsh. Let me look, like I have nothing. Joe Walsh heard me speak and he had some very good things to say about me, but is Joe Walsh an economist? Is Joe Walsh a technologist? Is Joe Walsh any? And I'd love to have him here to ask him these questions too. Joe, are you an economist? Are you a technologist? Are you an AI expert? Are you any of those things? If you're not, then why are you saying, oh, it's just going to do it? Joe, you have to know the difference between linear and exponential. They're two different things. If the rate of job creation if the rate of job destruction supersedes the rate of job creation, that's a losing formula for this argument that people just come up with. So I want to know, like, before people, flap their lips, because anyone can flap their lips, what research have you done? What expert have you talked to before you flap your lips? Because I can flap my lips. I can be like, yeah, and then we're going to do it, and it's going to be amazing, and we're going to, and AI is going to, okay, you see, when I talk like that, I may get people to feel something. But if I'm talking with passion and pointing my fingers and getting all angry and that does not. Where is the evidence and where are the experts? Any schmo can talk with passion and talk with conviction, but then you need the data and the experts behind you. Now, on the flip side of that, Paul, I've noticed that any person can also talk. Let's say I'm talking very dry, and as you can see, I have this chart up here, and this chart shows that this is going to happen in like 5 years. And if we don't get ahead of this, you see, the way I'm talking is very boring. It's very monotonous. Right. But even if I talk in this boring, monotonous way, doesn't mean what I'm saying isn't true.
Right.
So one of the things that I've seen that's actually a gigantic detriment to our country and to the lack of critical thinking that we have as a nation is that people are looking, because they're so angry and they're so frustrated, they want to eat out of the palm of the hands of the people who get them to feel something, even if those people may have ulterior motives that are not good for our country. Now, on the flip side of that, you'll have a person who's really intelligent, really knows what they're talking about, and could really put together a good argument, but they don't have the passion and the fire in their belly. So people are going to be like, we don't like listening to those people. They're boring and they don't agree with what we say. This is our biggest misalignment. Of what we have going on, but the thing to me is that I want to talk to the experts, because if the rate of job destruction is going to supersede the rate of job creation, we're fighting a losing battle, and we're going to need UBI as soon as possible.
Most definitely. We're actually seeing it now, and one of the other things that we're seeing is we don't even pay a cost of living wage as it is. All right. And granted, there are some states that have lifted their minimum wage up to, like Arizona's like 13.85. California, I think, is like 15.50 or something. But that's still not a cost of living wage. Okay. When I wrote my book, cost of living for like 2017 was 16.50 an hour. Okay. When I refigured it at the beginning of 2022, it was $36.10 an hour. That's like 72,000 a year. Okay. $15 an hour is only 30,000 a year. You can't even work two $15 an hour jobs and make the cost of living today.
Right.
Okay. So where are these jobs? Where's the cost of living? And my plan would be to have a cost of living amendment, which guarantees that whatever the cost of living is, that's what the minimum wage is, period. Cost of living goes up, that minimum wage goes up to meet it. If the cost of living goes down, the wage goes down. An adjustable wage. Your wage should fluctuate with the economy. All right. And with that, there should also be a UBI. And I think whatever the cost of living is, the UBI should be a quarter of the cost of living. So if it's $70,000 a year for the cost of living, then we should be getting $17,500 a year in a UBI.
I know that we're going to have a little bit of a disagreement here because I just believe that the UBI should just be the cost of living. And I know, all the arguments against that, but my idea for the UBI is actually something that's like no one in this world, and I know this is kind of like a utopian idea, should have to rely on any kind of relationship to get their needs met. And whether that's being a wife, whether that's being a worker, whether that's, being, because I just think that, like these strings that are attached to people is just kind of not freedom. So I think that, like anything that has to do with like food and shelter and getting your basic survivable needs should just be a given. And then anything, kind of after that, you have to work for, because then, like, a husband can't say, "Where are you going? You need me to survive." A family can't tell somebody who wants to like go do his own thing, "Where are you going? You need me to survive." And especially like employers can't say, "Where are you going? You need us to like do that." So
Yeah.
right. That's just like my personal take on it. But for all those people like putting up like this will make people lazy argument, it's like I remember being like 8, 9 years old, having all my basic needs taken care of and not having to pay for it. I don't remember that making me lazy or that making me, any less of a worker than what I want to be. It's all just psychological stuff here. I think what it is that, how can I say this? Like the incentive structures are messed up. And the thing is that if you're like an employer out there who wants like good, loyal, kind of hardworking workers, like give them, like, there has to be more reasons out there other than money that people would want to work for you. Like, is it a good work environment? Is it a work environment where people feel like there's growth? Is it a work environment that'll like challenge people, et cetera, et cetera? To boil everything down to just like, hey, look, if you don't work, you're not going to be able to afford your basic needs. It's just such a simple minded way of controlling a society. It's like a caveman way of controlling a society. And I like to say this. I like to say that we're living in the space age. We can't have Stone Age minds operating a space age society.
No, I agree. I agree. Excuse me. Sitting too long. Sometimes I do that.
Oh,
A lot of the reasons why a lot of people think that if we did a UBI, people would be lazy is they try to use the welfare system as a comparison. They try to use unemployment as a comparison. But the reality is if you look at the statistics for like welfare, like 95% of the people that go on welfare are on it for less than a year. All right. And the percentage is even higher of those who are on it for less than 2 years because people don't want to be on it. They want to work and they want to have a job because welfare isn't enough to survive on. Okay.
right.
So most people aren't on it for all that long of a period of time. I've been on it and I wasn't on it long because, hey, I wanted to get out there. I've also been on unemployment. Now, granted, unemployment versus welfare, I probably rode my unemployment out a little bit longer than I did when I was ever on welfare. And that's because, quite frankly, when you work so long and now it's like, okay, I can take a few months here and have a little vacation and relax before I have to start looking for another job. So I think there might be just a little more abuse of the unemployment system, but the numbers are still pretty much the same that 95% of the people that are on unemployment get off of it before it ends.
Right.
Okay.
But what about realizing this? How upside down are these idiotic incentives? Like we said, it's like the UBI just comes no matter what, but the welfare and the unemployment
Right.
put caps on you. Now the
Correct.
funny thing is, remember, the pandemic extended unemployment was more money than people actually saw at their jobs. And remember, through no fault of their own, we had a pandemic. But just imagine this. Look, if you work, we're going to give you less money. Okay, then why am I working?
Right.
I mean, what is that? And then people are like, you see, that's the problem with UBI. You numbskulls, that's not UBI. UBI gives you the money no matter what. I can't believe how many thick-headed people I talk to that think it's the same thing. If I like how dumb can you be? I'm sorry, I'm getting into that mood, but it's like I already told you, if you're working, you're gonna get this money, and it's gonna be more, and you're working and you're getting it. Would you say you would say, okay, I just work to get more? But if I told you, hey, look, I'm gonna give you more money if you don't work, then you'd be like, okay, then why the hell am I working? I don't understand why people conflate it and they make it the same thing. It's the epitome of ignorance.
Well, because they make the assumption that if I can live off of it, why would I work? All
Why?
right.
Well,
And this is why my plan for having the UBI to be a quarter of the cost of living. Now,
okay.
I want you to think about this though. The wages we receive today do not meet the cost of living. I'm talking about an actual cost of living wage, $36.10 an hour, $72,000 a year. So you go work at a McDonald's, you're getting the cost of living. All right.
Mhm.
And you're working a higher up job, it tiers, it stacks. Okay. You're going to get paid the equivalency of where you're at in that job. All right.
Right.
So this is why I would only pay a quarter of the cost of living because you've already got a job that is paying you the cost of living minimally.
Mhm.
Whereas right now, a job doesn't pay you the cost of living. And if you were to pay a UBI that's equal to the cost of living, why go work at a job that's going to pay
Right.
less?
Now here's
That, but now you make the job at least the cost of living. Now I'm going to go out and work because I'm going to double my income if we go by your way, and my way is a quarter of it. I can still bankroll that, you know.
right.
And now,
So
if you don't have a job, you should get the cost of living to live.
right. Exactly. Now the funny thing is like I wonder, do people consider going to school working, or do they just consider it studying? But even when you're, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not being paid to go to school, but you still do it because it's going to like improve your life. In fact, when you go to colleges and universities, like you're paying to go to school, but it's like, what about those people? Do those people like those people, their parents or their family is paying for their cost of living, but are they lazy? Are they not worthy of life? Like, I can't believe how dumb people can be sometimes. It seems like I don't understand.
I
You
know.
know?
See, if a rich or a wealthy person is doing it, then it's
Right.
not laziness and
Mhm.
it's not freeloading because, well, they have
Mhm.
money. But now,
Right.
if you're uh, impoverished and you're living at home, now you're freeloading. You should be working a
Okay.
job while you go to school. You know,
Right, exactly,
so
exactly.
that's the mindset brainwashing that's been going on
In
for
this country.
decades. When
Yeah, yeah.
because when I was working in Nevada and all that, and I was working in a casino, a full time job. I was a
Mhm.
bounty hunter. Okay, I did them both at the same time, and I was a
Okay.
full time student.
Right.
Okay, I had Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I would get up Tuesday morning at
Mm,
midnight,
right.
and I would not go to sleep until Thursday night at like 9 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. And in between there, I would take little cat naps just to get through the day because I was working two full time jobs and I was a full time student. Now,
Okay.
can it be done? Yes. But do you know the toll that took on me?
Right.
That beat the hell out of me.
Yeah. It's inefficient. I think what our country has a severe case of ADHD and short attention span in the worst way that I can think of. Because we don't look at things in a long-term view. We look at things in a short-term view, kind of like corporations and their short-term profits.
Right.
So let's let me set up a hypothetical world where we actually did have UBI. So let's say you were in let's turn the clock back to the time that you were talking about, and let's say that that people like you had a UBI to keep them afloat. So maybe instead of just like being tired all the time and having to take all these cat naps or whatever you want to call it, they actually had the time to think. And this is what we do worst in this country, to think and to kind of like plan out their lives in a way that didn't have to be like juggling everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like instead of me trying to like catch this here and catch things there, wait a minute, let me think. Let me think of the best long-term strategy for my life right now. Let me get out a whiteboard and let me start kind of like thinking of things. Let me start making some phone calls to people. And so instead of having to be on this hamster wheel and just your mind being in like 5, 10 different places at once, get rid of the hamster wheel and say, my mind doesn't have to be at 5, 10 different places at once. I have this UBI. Now, in the time that I have, that I don't need to be hustling like a rat in a maze,
Mm-hmm.
let me think. And then what would happen if our society thought more like that? We'd have a lot more intellectuals, we'd have a lot more philosophers, we'd have a lot more creatives, we just have a lot more people that could strategize, that could
Mm-hmm.
come up with ideas, that could come up. Just imagine if Einstein didn't have the time to think about all the things that he thought of. Imagine he always had to be
Right.
running around and doing jobs and doing this. We'd lose. We're losing on our best and our brightest, because instead of like propping them up, we're putting him in this rat maze. And then we have boneheads out there that are like, yeah, that's what makes us number one. It doesn't make us number one. It makes you a dummy. Like, I'm sorry, I have to be honest. And if they wanted to debate with me, fine. But I just think it's just the stupidest thing that we're so proud of this culture of stressing everybody out when we can have a culture of like
Mm-hmm.
like thinking for the future, thinking about what's going to happen, thinking. I don't know. People are proud that we don't give people free time, that we don't give people time to think, that everybody's mind has to be juggling everything all at one time. And then we wonder why, oh, we're not the best anymore, or where all this stress comes from and where all this anger comes from. I don't know. I don't know, man. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, poverty.
Right.
Poverty is one of the leading causes of criminality, and like the example with Morin Vibes that I gave you at the beginning and all that. People are going to steal bread because they're going hungry. Why do people
don't make them go hungry?
Yeah, so you get angry, you resort to other things that may cause addictions. And again, that's going to cost you money and drive you further into an impoverished state. So when you start messing with people's mental health due to, hey, how am I going to live in this world? You have an angry world. Now, if we were to implement some of the ideas that you and I have talked with, my idea is from 0 to 18, from the day you're born to the day you graduate high school, you have a UBI accumulating in a bank account so that when you turn 18 and you graduate from high school, it's all available to you. And then, of course, we have to fix our educational system so you don't go out and blow all that money, but instead you can continue into college. Now, think about this. You sit there and you got $100,000 or so waiting for you when you turn 18 and you get out of college. You can go out and you can buy a vehicle and you can go to college. You can live at home. You still got a UBI coming into you, and you can spend the next 8 years getting a full out education, not needing to worry about work, but bam, get that education, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever it is you want to take, and then go into a world of working where maybe instead of working everybody 40 goddamn years, you work people 20 years instead so that they can enjoy the rest of their life. And in that time, they can utilize that UBI to either form a retirement to add to the retirement that they're going to get. And my retirement starts at age 50 with a full UBI, which is more than Social Security. So, I mean, people would be much happier,
me people like us, Paul, we get it, but now we have to get the Pelosi's and the McConnells and the Bidens and all those people to sit here with us and have these discussions with them.
Yes.
Because they don't want to have these discussions. They want to talk about Trump's arraignment. They want to talk about their culture wars. They want to talk about some bullshit, nonsense, idiotic brainlessness that's just going to last like one news cycle. And then everybody's going to be worse off for it. And then what happens after that news cycle? Some other bullshit's going to happen. And then another news cycle. And then some other bullshit. And then another news cycle. Right. This is this is the way that it operates. It's as stupid as can be. Well, I mean,
it comes down to, Ariel, if we don't have these problems, in other words, we fix all the problems, then what is a candidate going to campaign on to get into office?
Right.
They have nothing. And this is the reason why they don't fix anything. I didn't write anything new. Okay. I laid out these solutions, and it's not something that's new. You can look throughout history. These things have been proposed before. About the only thing that I've come up with that's different than anything else is my taxation plan. Outside of that, everything else in my book has been discussed, but it won't be utilized because we have people that are going to run for office and they need something to run on. We're going to fix this. We are going to fight for your rights. And they continue to fight and fight and fight. Yeah. And there's no outcome because they want that campaign money to come in to get them reelected so they can get paid. $170,000+ a year
for wasting our time,
which is what, 5 times greater than the cost of living and 10, 15 times greater than what most people get paid in this country now.
It makes no sense.
And they're trying to tell us how we need to live.
It's a racket.
$175,000 a year. I can fucking budget.
Right. It's a complete racket. And also, Paul, do you know the definition of the definition of cancer?
Well, not the exact definition,
Okay,
but I mean, it's
but it has to do
way.
with uncontrolled growth.
Right.
That's what cancer is. A growth. Does that remind you of anything? It
Oh,
reminds me, it reminds me of the chase for just money and profits. But when this is being chased, there has to be some kind of idea behind it. Like profits and power for the sake of profits and power, and no kind of like overarching idea behind it, is uncontrolled growth, which is cancer. And I
Right.
think our country is experiencing this cancer of the mind, cancer of the spirit, cancer. You know. That's what I see.
You're absolutely right. And what's so sad is if we don't get people in office that truly understand what's going on, the next decade is going to be a very bad decade for this country, along with a lot of other countries. Okay. And granted, there's a lot of other countries that are starting to see how things work and are starting to plan for what's coming, where the United States is still trying to run the same gambit and
On fumes.
right. And they're going to lose. They're going to lose. And it's going to be a sad day when it all hits them and they're like, wow, we should have done this a decade ago.
Okay, this is interesting. If you see crap flying towards the fan, maybe I wouldn't want to put my hand there because that's disgusting. But I would want to like get maybe like a piece of cardboard so it hits this before it hits the fan, right?
Right.
That's what we have to do here. And the amazing thing to me is like people are still just like kind of going about their lives as if like la-di-da, nothing is happening. You know, they're used to repetition. They're used to just a, what do you call it, a cycle or routine. People love routines. You can't get it. Like I know people that past a certain age, they'll have the same routine and the same personality and nothing is ever going to change. I never want to be like that. I always want to grow. I always want to think outside the box. I always want to be around people that kind of challenge me intellectually. So if we don't do something soon within the next 2 to 3 years to get bright minds that are in finance, that are in the tech, that are in artificial intelligence, that are bring them together and say like, these are the problems that we see down the road. What are we going to do to get in front of these problems instead of the problems getting in front of us? Because right now the problems are getting in front of us and we're behind them. We need to get in front of the problems. But we have these ridiculously stupid boneheads that want to talk about these issues of like culture of the green M&M and Mr. Potato Head, and it's like, do you people need a lobotomy right now? What the hell is wrong with all of you? You think we have time to play these stupid games while people are suffering like this? I don't know.
Ariel, I tell you, you said you gave that shit hitting the fan scenario. You know, I hate to say it, brother, but the shit's already hit the fan, and they're so used to walking around in their own shit and waddling in it and breathing in it and rolling in it that they don't notice the stench that they carry around with them. And unfortunately, people like you and I, we smell that stench a mile away. And we're trying to say, dude, take a goddamn shower and go clean it up. And they don't want to hear us.
They don't want to hear it.
What shit?
They want to run around in their underwear like a bunch of 5-year-olds with all of it smeared all around themselves, prancing through all of society and wanting our attention.
Yes. You know, it's like I said, Ariel, it's already here. It's already happening. Okay. We got chat AI that is just smart as fuck, that even the greatest minds of the world have said, hey, we need to stop for 6 months and figure this shit out before we turn it back on, because it's smarter than we are. It's faster than we are. And we don't know what it can do.
Right.
So we need to put some guidelines in place before we move forward.
Guardrails.
I want you to think about this, and I want everybody listening to think about this. When people that are out there that are in the AI industry that see what's coming and know the capability of what's coming and are telling you that we're coming into a great change. We're coming into a great change. And if you're not willing to open your eyes to take a second to observe this change that's coming and really take a good look at it, it's going to happen. And you're going to be sitting there going, what do I do? Why didn't I do something sooner? Why didn't I do something before this happened? Because now people are dying.
Too late.
People are living on the streets. You think the homeless problem is bad now. Okay. We have 350 million Americans in this country. What if suddenly half of them are in the streets? Can you imagine that? 175 million people living in the streets.
I mean, if you think about our political system and our media in this country, this is what they're doing. La 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 la. like that's basically it in a nutshell. But what I'm trying to see is that, and I mean, not to get off topic, but that's why I want Andrew Yang to be a little more aggressive than he is. Yes. Because this is no time for dilly-dallying and playing games and drinking beers and having a fun night. I don't,
I interviewed Holden Collada, just like a week ago, and I kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing. And when you look back at the creation of the Republican Party to begin with and what they had to do on the community level first to get that notoriety in there, I understand that they're doing this, but I also agree with you that they need to put more stuff up and say, hey, this is what we stand for. This is what we're fighting for. And still do it on the community level, but announce what it is that you're doing. So I get where they're coming from, but I think they truly need to get off their horse.
You're right. And unlike you, I am in the Forward Party. I do endorse them. But that being said, what I want to see is I want to see that, because like we said, you said the shit's already hit the fan. So if it's already hit the fan, it's like we need to put this thing into maximum overdrive, or by the time we want to get anywhere, we're already gonna see the homeless population like 5 times what it is right now. So I'm thinking to myself, do we have the time? That's all that I'm worried about. And the thing for me is sometimes people, let me just say, just from personal experience, people don't pay attention to you unless you shock them. But after that initial shock, they're like, oh, I wonder what that is. And from time to time, people do respect you when you're a little bit assertive with them, depending on the context or what's going on. But I've seen that, when I stood my ground and when I quit that toxic job, I had one of my coworkers actually congratulating me instead of telling me oh, you made such a rash decision. What's your problem? Why would you do something like that? When people show that you kind of stand up for who you are and what you believe in, some of them, that's more of an attractor than people think is a detractor.
Right.
From what I've seen.
There's about 600,000 people in this country that are homeless right now. And I'm sure that the numbers are probably a lot higher than that. But let's just go with what the statistics are, because as of 2020, it was 582,462 people. It's 600,000. Okay. In the next 5 years, it's not going to double. It's not going to triple. It's not going to quadruple. It's going to be at least 10, if not 20 times that. We're going to have approximately 6 to 12 million people homeless in this country. And that number is going to continue to skyrocket if we stay on this same path. If you think it's bad now where you live, you see homeless people, and you think it's bad now, just multiply the amount of homeless people you see by 10 or 20 or 50 or 100, because within the next 5 to 10 years, that's where we're going to be at if we don't change things now.
That's a scary thought and a sobering one as well. I just don't understand, like at that level, they're like, I'm wondering if there's going to be riots. There's going to be like so much like anger and frustration and hatred and like these incidents of like random violence and what have you. And it's not like we do a good job as a schooling system to pat ourselves on the back that we don't teach kids about money, about housing, about emotional intelligence, about any of these things. And then we have the people like you and I, but then we have other people also in this country who are just, it's their routine. They'll know nothing more. If they have a job, they're stable and they pay their bills, they're just like, oh, okay, like whatever. I don't, oh, whatever. And they just go about whatever it is. And it's just the way that our society has been structured for people to have short attention spans, that they just squirrel, the news cycle, squirrel. We can't continue like this.
No, you know, if it goes that way, there's one of two outcomes. All right. First of all, you're going to see martial law installed. Martial law becomes a thing. And then you're going to see walls going up around cities, and people that are homeless will be pushed outside of those walls, and the elites will remain within those walls. And will you see rioting? Will you see rebellion? Yes, you will. That's when the country truly collapses. That's when our country now becomes an open platform for other countries to come in.
It's so gross when I think about it. I think about like what promise like this country had and what we could have become if people just listened. But people are just so used. People on the extremes have these ideological blinders on, and it's like some people take the time to see, how can I take off the ideological blinders that these people have, and you almost can't.
Right.
So my idea is that whoever of the people who are watching us right now or listening to us, if you're one of those people who do not have ideological blinders on, please reach out. Remember, it's WPKN.org, Radio Uninvited, me or Paul, like, please, we need everyone who doesn't have ideological blinders to wake up, because that's the only thing that I can see from now.
Right. It's just like when Bryce and I did that space a little while back. The American dream is dead. Okay. The American dream is dead. But just because it's dead doesn't mean we can't create a new American dream. So that's what I encourage. I encourage people to start voicing their thoughts. What can we do to make it better? And let's start getting together and getting it done.
Yeah. And for me, I think, have you've ever seen those like science fiction kind of lands that are absolutely beautiful? They're these tall like buildings. There's these vehicles that have vertical landing and takeoff, like wonderful scenery, like world of the future. It's just amazing. I was looking forward to that when I was young. Not what I'm seeing right here. Like those worlds of like abundance, creativity, ideas, not like a rat in the maze kind of bullshit that we're seeing right now, if I'm being honest.
Yes, yes. Well, I've been reaching out to Joe Walsh. I want to try to get Joe Walsh back on here and maybe have Holden Collada and Joe Walsh have a conversation, because again, this isn't about trying to get these sides to battle each other. My idea is to try to bring these sides together and see if we can reach a compromise. So, and I already know that Holden's game for it. I just got to get Joe Walsh on board, and it doesn't have to be Joe Walsh. I'll take any Republican willing to come on here. Hey, bring it. Let's have a conversation. And this isn't about who's better or who's superior. This is about sitting down and actually having a good faith conversation. If you're willing to do that, come on. Let's get it done. Let's get on here and get it going. Especially if you're in the political realm. If you're a politician of any sort, the invite is there. Come on here. Let's have a discussion. I would love to get, God, I don't care who it is. I don't care who it is.
But we'll also need like technologists too. People who are in the cutting edge of like all this stuff, like Sam Altman, maybe Musk, like people like that, because like we can't have like our politicians not knowing about technology, because that's just embarrassing as hell. That's a gigantic embarrassment.
It is. Well, Ariel, thank you. I appreciate you coming on here. It has been a pleasure. We're a little bit after that hour mark. We're going to have to do this like maybe once a month or once every couple of months, have you come on here and, have a discussion on a couple other different topics and everything. I enjoy going into your spaces, and everybody follow Ariel Nation 2023. Make sure that you follow him. Ariel has spaces on Twitter. Go in, have a chat, or just go in and listen if you like,
Yeah, you're all welcome.
Yeah. Ariel and I, we love talking to ourselves. So, I mean, it's not a problem. All right, Ariel, thank you so much.
Peace. It's always a pleasure.
Yep. Remember, everyone, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.